Joe Ayoub, how are you doing?
Good. Thunder. It's good to see you, my
Yeah,
friend.
it's great to see you. It's great to see you too. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Lent. Something that we share in common is we're both
Indeed.
Orthodox Christians,
And for those of you
and
who don't know, yeah, the Easter is we're what 4 weeks off from
yeah,
Western Easter. So we're this year is the year where it's 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 the furthest it's been in a long time.
yeah, which is meant sort of like double Lent for me. Um, in a matter of speaking. Um, so you were born into that though, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It
So
goes it goes back pretty deep on both sides of uh, my parents.
yeah.
Um,
Now I'm a convert, and um, prior to that, I mean we have a lot of history. Okay, so this
we
is
got a
going to be
lot
a
to
lot of fun.
unpack.
Yeah, a lot of fun fact. Okay, so so let's see. We can go back to Western Michigan University, WMU, and let's see here. There's a really terrible picture of the East End Orchestra.
Oh, I saw that someone posted that on Facebook.
Yeah, or or Raph still has hair.
Yeah. Oh goodness. I gotta
Uh,
tell you, Thunder, watching these podcasts, it's like it's memory after memory. Everyone, all the old buds from Kalamazoo. I ran into Derek, and just watched him. I ran into him the other day because he's here in LA too. And I was
right.
like, I just saw your podcast with Thunder. I'm gonna do one in a little bit. Yeah, it's so cool to and
Yeah.
remembering that when we met him, he was a little kid, and we were in college, and he
Yeah.
was incredible. It was just like I had never seen a talent like that at that age.
Yeah.
Really, really
Yeah.
cool.
He's serious.
Yeah, it was a cool interview. So I'm just trying to get through all of them. You have so many up that I'm like, I got to catch up.
Yeah. It's been a way for me to stay connected. To people that um, I admire, respect, people that friends, people that I haven't been in touch with for a long time, maybe too long because everybody gets too busy. You know, and you know how the industry is. If things are going well, then that means you're going to be very busy, and often is the case that means that folks that you want to spend time with, you're not going to probably be able to spend time with them very often.
Yeah,
Um,
very true.
so, sort of the silver lining to this whole pandemic has been, the sort of time available, to have these kind of conversations um, with you all.
Did you start this pre-pandemic? This was like a
No, I started it maybe third week of, maybe it was the fourth week of March,
okay.
right after the pandemic started,
Oh, nice. Very cool.
and this is episode 135.
Wow. Like typical, like textbook Thunder. Like you just don't do things. You do them at the highest level you could even. Yeah, that's some classic Thunder, right? We always used to joke that when you started playing guitar and bass, and we were like, how does he have all these chops already? He just picked the thing up. It's crazy. But if the music is in there, it doesn't matter what instrument you're. That's just the vessel, right?
Well, I started playing bass before guitar, and um, I interviewed, my one of my bass heroes, Victor Wooten, and I started playing bass because he came to. So this must have been 2005. He came to Ohio State, where I teach, and he's buddies with Paul Robinson then, who was the double bass professor, and so he came in and did a master class. Um, and his band was also playing at a venue in town. But I went to the master class. It was intended for just bass players, and and right after the master class, I went right to a store and bought a bass. I was like, you know what?
Yeah, why not?
I have to do this. I have to do this. And and I think that was sort of the tipping point for me, because I've played with so many great bass players, people like yourself and Lyman Medeiros and Sean Summer and um, you know Kurt Kroenke and you know um, Rodney Whitaker and just all of these great bass players. Let's see here. I mean, I'm leaving out like a ton of names. Bob Hurst. Um, and so I don't know. I just feel like I've always heard bass. Like I've always heard bass lines, and in my writing and stuff, uh, that was always like an important voice. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start playing bass. And yeah, it was during it was during kind of a rough time for me, because I'm in my second marriage. So my ex-wife split, and I like my schedule opened way up, about the size of a bass guitar,
Right.
and and I was shedding like 5 hours a day, 5 6 hours, just watching all these like bass videos, and just I was falling asleep with the instrument on me and waking up, and you know it was better than I don't know, becoming a drunk or something.
Yeah, right. Well, that's your personality. Is you when you just dive into even it's funny it translates into everything, and that's why I mean so many of us being with you in at Western, we were in awe. I was there was something that clicked about that the dedication that I saw from you into things when it translated to religion too, and the fact that you
Mm,
read your way back. I just thought that was
yeah.
incredible, like that to be that high functioning. And usually, when someone's that into something, it kind of has the blinders a little bit, and that's all they do, and they do it really well. But it kind of translates into different things for you. It seems like.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of different interests. The I tell folks that I'm bored easily, and I don't know, that it could be a sign that maybe there's a lack of. Okay, so I look at it like it's like two sides of the same coin. Like if you're bored easily, that could mean that, yeah, maybe you're multi-talented and you just need to be challenged in different ways. It also could mean that you need to work on your ability to focus, you
Mm.
know, because those things could travel together. And so I've tried to um, use all the interests that I have to sort of still make sure that I'm still developing focus. So that's not just that I'm just jumping around to a bunch of stuff that's not necessarily related. Thank you so much for watching my video so far.
If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
It's not necessarily related, and I'm not covering any ground. I'm not accomplishing anything. It's just like wasted time. It's just, filler or something.
Yeah, but you're also very goal oriented. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like everything is very routine, right? For you, like from the bodybuilding to the music, obviously, to your faith and how much time you put into that. That's the thing. It never seemed aimless by any stretch of the imagination. It's quite the opposite. Always seems very focused coming from you.
Well,
That's funny. I'm trying to pick your brain now. I want to get into the thunder.
Well, I think I'm pretty intuitive, and I think the way that I kind of like test things out, and as I'm testing things out, I'm deciding if I really dig it or not, and then if I dig it, then I'm going to be all in on it.
Gotcha.
And that's not exactly the same as sort of beforehand setting a bunch of goals and just saying, okay, now I'm getting to this place and here's the fork in the road. I already planned for this. Okay, now let me go to the right. I knew I was going to go to the right. I think there's an improvised component to it. But improvisation, as Pastor Brooks, who I interviewed,
is there one with Pastor Brooks?
Yeah, there is. There is.
What a guy! What a great guy! I got another one I got to put on the list. I got to see that.
As he says, spontaneity. What was his? He says you have to prepare for spontaneity. Right. So it's like in music, like we talk about, like you need to really know the form, whatever the form of the tune that you're playing on. You have to really know the form, you have to know where you are all the time. Now, once you learn the form and are comfortable with the form, then you can start to sort of experiment with things because the form is still creating a sort of structure that you can, that you can sort of navigate,
Or that freedom in the boundaries sort of thing.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, freedom wouldn't really mean anything if there wasn't a structure. I mean, it's like chaos. Freedom with no rules is just chaos.
Right.
So Joe, I mean, we played together at Christian Life Center. We were mentioning that Pastor Joel Brooks. We played in East End Orchestra. We had that gig at District 211 for those years.
Years, right? Yeah,
that's right.
Steady for years.
Yeah, and we were all students. I mean, Tate McBroom, who basically almost single-handedly created, several. I mean, there were several venues that he had his hand in on creating live music, situations. And I'm going to actually be interviewing him also because
nice.
Yeah, super forward-thinking kind of dude who was also a good good drummer. But we did all this playing and everything. You remember the recruiting combo?
Mm-hmm.
So East End Orchestra was basically, it was the recruiting combo. And we went to, did you go on some of those trips, like to Detroit and stuff where we were playing?
I didn't do the Detroit ones. We just did I did the steadies. Man, there's so many gigs, but there were a couple when that we were doing that it was more, it wasn't East End, it was you. It was when you had the more R&B, This Is a Dedication and all that.
Oh, right.
And
I knew you was gonna. I knew you were gonna bring this up. I knew.
Yeah.
I could still hear you in my head saying, "This is a dedication." I can still hear you. That's right. There's
There's the downbeat every time. First couple times it fell apart until we okay, we got that.
Yeah, that was my fusion band called Infusion. And yeah,
And that was Jevin, right? Jevin, it was Jevin and Brett.
I mean, that seems right. That seems right. But I remember a gig where Smith, Desmond.
Oh yes, yeah.
Pocket.
Yep. So good. Who we went to high school together. So Desmond and I go further. Yeah, we were at Ottawa together in Grand Rapids.
No, I didn't know that.
So then when he started playing at Christian Life Center, yeah. I've known him since I was a freshman in high school. It's crazy. Or even before that, yeah. Nuts.
And we recorded one of my projects called The Way Home, and you played bass on that record. And you remember the story. I know you remember this. Remember we ended up having to do the session over again because there was a malfunction with the equipment, and Derico Watson was on the original session, but he couldn't make the other session, and so he ended up not being on the project, which was kind of sour grapes. But yeah, I mean,
did you do one of these with Rico yet?
Man, I have asked Rico, and I've sent him a couple messages. I think he's waiting for me to ask him a couple more times.
Oh, okay.
I think he's trying to be.
On the podcast.
I think he's trying to be coy. I think he's trying to act like, well, I don't really, I don't really want to talk.
We'll get it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it will happen eventually. Such a great drummer.
Oh yeah,
good dude.
That's the thing. I always talk about, people have sort of like, there's varying opinions on the college experience, and especially now, like when we were in college, I think it was still more sort of ingrained that, you got to go to college. Like that's, that's something you have to do, right? It's really, really pushed. And I think now it's a little more like, well, no, it's not for everybody. Certain people will take a different path, and that's fine. But the monumental sort of takeaway from my college experience was, without a doubt, my peers, like everyone I met there, and how that shaped my life, how that shaped my musical life, how that shaped my social life, I always bring up, like so Brett Farkas is our mutual friend. I talk about this all the time. Like I never would have moved to LA if he wasn't the one who put the bug in my ear and was like, because we were going to move to Chicago, like so many of our colleagues and buds. It was just from Kalamazoo to Chicago just made the most sense. And then everyone who was older than us, but were our friends because we were at school and they graduated before us, moved to Chicago, sort of paved the way. It's such a cool city. Like it was just sort of the no-brainer move. And for me, being from Grand Rapids, also being only 2.5 hours away from home, it's a simple drive. There were just so many things that were pulling me to Chicago. But because Brett came out here a couple times and did the Mancini Institute during the summer. He was just like, man, it seems like LA is, there's so much happening there. And for what we wanted to do, like really kind of get in the like touring sideman world. Yeah, all that is attributed to my friends and colleagues at school. Yeah. And I was even more intimidated because of you all, because the level was so high at what the musicians that were there, the musicality was so high that would you listen to something else?
No, I just jumped on and started talking to me.
Tried to get in the conversation.
Yep.
No, I was saying, yeah, the level was so high, and to be around that for 5 years, and to be able to learn. So I know you interviewed Raphael Crawford.
Yeah, that's him on the screen behind us here.
Oh, nice, awesome, yeah. So he was a roommate for a couple years, and we all played together many times, and the stuff he was the one who played me Ornette Coleman for the first time. He's the one who used to play. There was jazz all the time in our dorm room, and then when we had I just learned so much from you guys and playing with you, which ended up in the Christian, because you're the one who brought us all into Christian Life Center too. Yeah. I don't know if it was Charles or Pastor Joel, but you were the first one there, and then you became like the recruiter of musicians. So you were like brought all your buds in, and then we had this community there too. It was just like so much happening,
That was a great gig, man. The church thing was like, because frequently we'd have these, because Pastor Brooks is like, he's like, hey, if it starts to get good to him, he might not even preach. And there were a few times where we just played for the whole service,
Or he would play when he would sit down at the keyboard. It was like, it was getting good when he came over.
Oh,
and started shedding on, shredding on the keyboard. It's like, so powerful, so good.
Yeah. It was good. It was good times. And see, what was it? It was last night I interviewed that video went up earlier today, but Bartosz Hadala.
Oh,
right?
Awesome. Yeah. I saw him back there on the screen too.
Yeah. And so, it was really an incredible period of time. So many really, really talented folks that came out of that school. Matt Heredia.
Oh yeah.
It was just so many. There was just so many like really good. Chris Sargent, so many, just bad cats. And then Doug Pierce was there. I think that might have been after. You might have been. Do you remember Doug?
Yep, I remember Doug. And you brought Doug over to CLC also.
Right, and Mark Landis and
of course.
Goodness, that was it was really good times.
And
Jeremy Bieber.
Bieber, of course. Bieber's out here, so I see him occasionally. Awesome. Yeah, Sean Summer. Drew Schnurr was someone who helped me out early on. He got me my first gig out here was at a church that he was like my first paid gig in Los Angeles, and that was through Drew. So it was sort of like a cool, everyone taking care of each other and the different generations and the ones who moved first. And same with all the musicians that moved to Chicago. They seemed to stick together and sort of take care of each other. And so really, it was a great thing. But also the program itself was incredible. Like as a bass player, I remember when I was there, we had Rufus Reed come through. John Clayton was there. Dave Holland was there. Like, you know, there's just so many amazing like guest artists. Having Billy Hart there and Knifick and Zegree. It was just there's just seemed like a really vibrant time.
Yeah, Bartosz and I talked a little bit about Steve Zegree. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
And that dude. One thing I didn't say in Bart's interview is I didn't say that basically when Steve started Gold Company, not only was there not, at least in academia, there was nothing like that, but not trying to throw anybody under the bus or anything, but really he didn't really get support from the school. And so he had to go around and like raise money, get like corporate sponsorship for all the equipment and everything. And that dude was a hustle machine. Really, really incredible drive. And as I said, I mean, now if you look around the country now, I mean, everybody is, all of the programs are trying to do what Steve was doing with Gold Company. It's like the gold standard.
Yeah. Yeah. It was incredible who he brought to Kalamazoo, Michigan. You know what I mean? Tiny little speck on the map, and who he could bring in, and the level of musicians and the way he really was, like, I know it sounds cliche, but a lot of us saw him as a father figure type, like it wasn't just music. He was, I mean, a perfect example is when Brett and I finally fully decided we're gonna move to LA, and we were gonna come out together. He sat us down, and it's just another one of many, like, life-changing important moments from Dr. Zegree. And he was just like, you know what, just make sure it's not gonna be easy at first. It's gonna take a long time to like meet people and sort of get acclimated, and it's gonna feel like a huge, sort of, you're gonna feel small there because it's new and it's big, and it's just like, he's just like, give it 5 years. Like, try, if you can, just give it 5 years, give it time. He just said 5 years. It didn't matter. But what he was trying to tell us was like, don't get discouraged right away. It's going to take some work. It's going to take a lot of knocking on doors and making phone calls and going out and hearing people play and hanging out with folks. And he just had a way of, because he, my whole being there for 5 years, he sort of like, he guides you along the way. He kind of shows you a path or a way to success. And that was just another one that for him, he was just mentoring students like he always did, but those little moments stick with you. And I remember, I remember thinking when we hit 5 years here, we were like, we made it 5 years. Like Dr. Zegree said, just hang out for 5 years. I mean, now I'm on like year 18, but at that moment, it was like, it felt like another accomplishment of just sticking to it for a little while and trying to make it work versus, coming for a couple months and then bailing. So he had a way of really being a mentor and, like I said, like a father figure in a lot of ways. And even people who were going through things that weren't music related at Western, just we're all human beings. He would always, lend an ear or be able to help you out with that sort of stuff. Yeah. And the faculty, same as with Tom Knifick, it was just so great to have faculty like that, and to have the student and that the fact that they attracted so many great students and kept them there. You know, I guarantee you, not every school has a Thunder. We got a Thunder though. You know what I'm saying? We got one. I mean, where there's literally a phenom of a student that, you know, is on a level beyond even the faculty. It was just like to interact with that is, I'm telling you, that's huge. And I have to say something, like I saw you in many situations, like the way you could, let's say if there's a rhythm section, it was sort of falling apart, or maybe the tempo was a little faster, that you could glue a rhythm section back together with your playing while soloing, which I saw that multiple times and was blown away. Because usually as a rhythm section player, we're always the support. We're always the one sort of like holding the thing up. But you could find ways, if tempos were shifting or whatever, to sort of like redirect the band from a soloist perspective, which was, I never saw anything like that before in my life. Like mind blowing.
I'll pay you later.
No, I'm telling the truth right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying that, man. It means a lot coming from you. I learned so much from you guys, and not just about music, but you know, it's like the formative time in your life, and just to have folks that were as dedicated to music as you all, to sort of share that with, and that were, you know, striving to be good people and all of that kind of stuff, and you know, just like, you know, the bro code, you know, it was just yeah, it's family, you know, it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And you don't realize until the further you get away from it, like the years and years move on, that's when you really can like look back and say, wow, this concentrated 5 years of my life. I keep saying 5 years, people, because I was on the 5-year plan. Don't judge. You know what I'm saying? It just took me 5 years. But looking back and seeing it, and how much of who I am today is embedded in that period of my life. It's crazy. You know?
Totally.
Yeah, and all lifelong right. Friends, the whole bit, like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, like, you know, my whole journey to Orthodoxy and some of the conversations that we had, you know, along the way. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's good knowing you, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my brother had you out to St. Nicholas and you spoke about
That's right.
Converting. Yeah. I remember that. It was soon after you converted, I think.
Yeah, well, not that soon, because it was my wife, she came and we got married in, I'm supposed to know this.
Hey, you can edit that out, no problem. No one's gonna
know. Well, we've been married for 13 years. I know that. Right. So what was it? 2004. 2004 is when I converted. So it would have been about 4 or 5 years, maybe 5 or 6 years after that. But yeah, that was very cool. And yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the issues that I think we face in our um, in society, you know, in the states in particular, um, you know, that there are sort of ancient principles and truths that we, you know, if at least we would admit that maybe we don't like it, but if we had done things that way, things would be a lot better. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it just seems like we're really going off the rails with a lot of the um, you know, political unrest and stuff, and just all of the crazy stuff that's going on. Um, but you know, the Orthodox thing is great because it hasn't changed. It's still the same. It's been the same for all this time. And
And I think, yeah, I think it's. I remember when you told me, and when you called me, and I remember where I was. It's that clear because the phone call was so interesting, and I was like, "What? Thunder converted to Orthodoxy?" And um, you had mentioned that you were like, "Man, I thought you would have told me more about it." But it's funny. It's like that is sort of like, and Orthodoxy gets a lot of criticism for that. That it's not sort of like pamphlet handing out style. You know what I mean? It's a lot. A lot of it is inward focus. You're constantly like working on yourself in your journey, and it's definitely evangelical, but not evangelical in the sense that we know the word
right,
evangelical.
right.
So I always love Saint Seraphim's quote. No, which saint is it? Yeah, Saint Seraphim, right? Save yourself, and 1,000 around you will be saved. This idea
Yeah.
that like really work on yourself and make sure that every human being you're talking to, you realize you're staring into the face of God. All those things are the really inspiring stuff that I try to.
And yeah, and the what is it, the Catholic saint, what is it, Thomas Aquinas, what is it, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary use words.
Use words. Yeah, I love that one too. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because prior
That's a
to
mic drop comment right there before microphone made.
You know, it's my approach to my faith was much different prior to the conversion, because I think I felt this sort of necessity to sort of preach the gospel with words, so to speak, you know, and then, but the more I thought about it, I was like, people aren't really going to listen to you if you're just sort of telling them stuff that's unsolicited, right? And so really it's about picking your spots, right? So like if somebody asks you a question, yeah, I mean, there you go. Be prepared to, give an answer that makes sense. But people are not always in the sort of disposition, or they're not always open to hearing stuff. And if you're constantly sort of doing that, all it's going to do is just turn people off. And so especially after my conversion, my whole thought process on it totally changed. And it's not something that I wear on my sleeve. I mean, people know because I conduct myself a certain way. At school, I have icons in my office. Students want to ask me about that, they can ask me about it, but you know, I'm not going to say anything. Um, and it's and although that maybe that seems like, well, you know, if you really believe that this is the truth, then why aren't you like shouting it from the rooftops? Well, that's not really the Orthodox way, is it? Um,
And what's the
and
harder thing to do? What the harder thing to do is to love people constantly and
right,
selflessly. And that is to try and continually do that. I mean, yeah, in some ways, talk can be cheap a lot of the time.
right,
Like, like to really put in the work and to love people when it's hard, really hard to love people. And
yeah,
like that's that 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 seems like where the energy needs to go, you know?
yeah. I mean, you think of someone like Saint Mary of Egypt. Um, her conversion story is like incredible because she's a prostitute, and then she converts, and I mean, she tries to go into church and she can't because you know, um, the icon, the presence of the icon wouldn't allow her to go in, and and then she spends like the rest of her life out like by herself,
Like
in the
more, yeah,
tombs.
more of her life was in the desert alone than
Yeah,
she lived. And yeah, and if anyone out there like this, the story is incredible. If you're like, I'm not religious, I'm not it's unbelievable, and it's such a lesson in humility, right? For Saint Zosimas, that's the whole thing.
right, right,
Yeah,
right, right. That's
and it
right.
just shows um, how we are. Yeah, we are all important, every single one of us. How do we get this? You knew this was going to start getting deep.
This is the perfect time, man. It's like the perfect time for us to be talking, and I really didn't plan it to be during Lent, and it's like the perfect time for us um, to have this conversation.
Yeah, and
So
it's a
we talked,
unique. It's something that we both have. That we share this deep passion for two things that are extremely important to us: music and
right?
orthodoxy. And it's a it's a it's a cool common denominator for us, and has been.
So we talked about college in formative years. Let's rewind. Um, so let's talk to me a little bit about young Joe. Um, you know, when music started to become a thing, when it became big enough for you to consider college, when you knew that this is what you wanted to do with your life, um, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, the big thing at the beginning of all of it is Nick, and this is cool too because I know you know him so well. Also,
Mm.
this is my older brother. I have one older brother. He is now a judge in Grand Rapids. But we grew. Hold on, I think you got frozen. Oh no,
I
you're
can
back.
still hear you.
Okay, cool. So he's a judge now in Grand Rapids, but we grew up playing music together, and the music spark, 100% started with him because he did Suzuki My mom saw he was always singing as a real, young boy. And he's 2 years older than me, or a year and a half older than me. So we're really close in age. But when he was young, he just took to music immediately. My mom loved music. It was like, this is great. So she put him in Suzuki, which, do you know about Suzuki?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you do. But for anyone else out there, it's basically it's all ear training. It's a teaching method, especially for younger kids, that is very ear based. So his ears got insanely good really young. Now I never did Suzuki, but I would go to the lessons with him because we would just be in the other room with my mom and I waiting for him. But the big thing is he was like you, like by the time he was in, fifth, sixth grade, he's playing piano and singing, accompanying himself, playing all the classics. He loved, Harry Connick Jr., Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, but also loved like Billy Joel, Elton John, all the piano player singers, right?
Right.
And he and then he started playing guitar also in about fifth grade, and that's when he got really into folk and like Simon and Garfunkel, James Taylor, stuff like that. Well, um, I didn't take to the piano. Was not down with the piano. Like mom was still like, you got to do piano lessons, and it just, I wish I would have taken to it more now, of course, but at the time I just wasn't into it. It was just a kid and wanted to play Nintendo or do whatever, play outside with my friends, or just wasn't into it. But by the time middle school hit, that's when I started getting into like rock and roll. My brother was listening to the Beatles and like everyone else I mentioned, and I started like checking out like bands were coming out like Guns N' Roses and Metallica and Nirvana and all the grunge stuff, and that's when I was like, it struck me as this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that's when, so initially I wanted to play drums. I love the drums. Before we even got a drum set for the house, a friend came over and jammed with us and left his drums, so I would play on the drums. But my brother was big on, he was like, man, you should play bass, because if you play bass, we can have a band. We have a drummer friend that was that went to our church. He already had a kit, like play bass. And I was just kind of like, okay. And then fully took to it and loved it. He showed me how to pick out bass lines, like using my ear. Before I even bought a bass, I was picking out bass lines on his acoustic guitar. So I already started to like figure out how changes worked, you know what I mean? Like chord progressions and things, and just the different movement in the bass. And my mom had old Motown records. She had this Jackson 5 Diana Ross record that I loved. She had this Fifth Dimension record. And for some, that stereo too, it was like, when you listen to old records, like the bass punches through in a different way. So it was never, for a lot of young musicians, like it's hard to pick out the different instruments in a record, but I was able to pick out bass like right away and loved it. And kind of, I always reference, so she had that Fifth Dimension record, which was the Aquarius Let the Sunshine In cover from Hair. That was a big hit that the Fifth Dimension did. And I remember thinking like that, this is the funkiest bass line I've ever heard in my life. I found out later it was Joe Osborne and that he produced that record, but that and the Jackson 5, I was just like blown away. So anyway, I was lucky because, to be perfectly honest, I don't have your set of like self-starter skills. I'm very much a younger brother. I'm very much was influenced by my older brother, but he was always just like, come on, I'm going to go play this thing. You're coming with me. So we always had this outlet of each other playing and going in the basement and jamming. And then when I later started to get into upright and jazz, then we would just go in the living room. He had the piano there, I had the upright. We play tunes, learn tunes, and it just sort. And then in high school, I started to, join bands and be in bands with my friends, and I was playing drums in a band in high school for a long time, which is great. Just being a rhythm section player, uh, to sort of have a handle on the drums too was, I think, because I still love drum. You just love that marriage of the rhythm section, um, and then by then, I would say by even in seventh grade, I think that's when the spark hit, and it just like then it was full on blinders. This is what I want to do. This is it. And then once I graduated high school, I actually wanted to come out and go to MI. I wanted to go, and at the time it was called BIT, Base Institute of Technology. But everyone's like, we think you need to go to a normal college. They sort of pushed that. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I can do that. And then I auditioned to Western, and I loved it. It went really well. And I remember I had another audition. I had two auditions. I auditioned to Western, and I had an audition at Michigan State. Well, the night before the audition at Michigan State, I was looking up on the papers where I needed to go, where I needed to be, and realized there were all these orchestral excerpts that you needed to learn for that audition. Western didn't require them. I just had prepared a piece, prepared a couple jazz tunes, but State you had to play these excerpts. So the night before, I was like, there's no way I can do this now. So I bailed on the Michigan State audition. I just didn't go. And I was like, all right, if I get into Western, cool. If not, I'll go to community college for a little bit and try and get it together. But I got into Western, thank God. And it was just an easy transition. And it was great because all through Western, too, I mean, I was gigging with you and so many people there. And we, like a bunch of us we had a couple rock bands while we were there, Miles from Maybe and Doc Brown later. But I was also still coming home. My brother and I had a steady gig in a hotel for probably like most of college. Like I think we had a steady there, and it started in high school for like 6-7 years, and that's when like just the learning of all the tunes. We just played everything, and it was a trio, piano, bass, drums. So a lot of times I'd fill out more of the parts, and that's where all that that's where all the learning was. It was just so concentrated, like being at Western, studying music, and then all this gigging around it. That was the.
Yeah.
And then after that, like I didn't have like big, gigantic, unrealistic dreams. I was just like, I know I found something that I love and that's really special. Not everyone gets that opportunity, to really dig into something and love it. And I always had this thought that okay, even now, the worst gig I've had playing music, right? Was always better than any other job still, right? Does that make sense? So the worst gig you could possibly do is still better than any other job I could think of. Yep. So I was like, I love this. I don't know. When I first moved out to LA, I was hoping to maybe, it wasn't and this was really beneficial to me because I think it sort of curbed some of the disappointment that people get when they move to a big city. I was just hoping to get enough work, maybe, you know, find a good wedding band to be in or something. It wasn't like I'm gonna go be a star. It was never like that. It was just like, how do I make this work? Let's figure it out. And then when things started happening, everything was like, oh, this is great. I love this. Oh, now this is great. So I starting from a place of like, I think a lot of people, especially artists, come out and sort of have this, I'm going to be a multi-platinum selling, Grammy award winning artist, or I'm going to be disappointed mindset, which is tough because that's a hard thing to achieve. But mine was a little bit more like I was very happy, kind of like being a part of the puzzle, and just finding some work and yeah.
So Big Burrito versus Qdoba.
Big Burrito all day, just because Qdoba, it's just like
Come on, talk about the rice. Talk about the rice. Come on.
I couldn't even tell the difference for a while between Qdoba and Chipotle. I was like, this is exactly the same restaurant. There's just
but back then, back then, I don't think that Chipotle was so. Okay, so I guess this is my opportunity to tell my Qdoba story. So yeah, so and it was kind of like so I guess kind of Southwest United States. It was two sort of competing Mexican grills. One was called Zteca and the other one was called Azteca. And Zteca, because the name was so similar to Azteca, they changed their name to Qdoba. Now this is way before anybody knew anything about Chipotle, right? So those two existed before Chipotle did.
Okay.
But the difference is that Chipotle, at least momentarily, was owned by McDonald's.
Right. Aren't they still?
No, they're not. So I guess the guy that at least initially owned him, I guess he maybe it was a temporary deal that he had with them where he could buy back the company or something. I'm not sure what the details of it, and I could be getting some details wrong. But the point is that McDonald's, that whole marketing engine, they use that to proliferate Chipotle all over the place. And so there's always way more Chipotles than any other kind of Mexican grill. And now it's like if you go to a Qdoba, the thought is that, oh, this is just a knockoff of Chipotle. But no, it's not. Actually, Chipotle is the knockoff of Qdoba. But and Qdoba is a little more authentic. The sauce is a little bit more flavor. I'm not hating on Chipotle. I eat there all the time, but it's just kind of an interesting thing. But remember the restaurant La Bamba.
La Bamba, yep.
Oh yeah. Now let me tell you something.
Wait, was La Bamba burritos as big as your head, or was that Big Burrito?
No, it was La Bamba.
It was La Bamba. Okay.
Yeah. So, and remember, La Bamba had chorizo.
Mm-hmm.
Praise the Lord. I'm sorry, it's Lent, and I shouldn't be talking about that. But they had chorizo. I'm over here like lusting after. Burritos here. Okay, so anyhow, La Bamba had chorizo, and so this is and that was like, I remember Landis and I going there all the time, and man, that chorizo was so flavorful. Now, it's just like a weird coincidence or something, but when I moved to Columbus, and I was kind of, you know, I had a lot of connections up in Michigan. I could gig as much as I wanted to. I mean, it was like, you know, I grew up there. I just had a lot of connections. And so I was a little nervous about moving to Columbus, although I was born in Columbus, and have a lot of family and stuff here. But I was just a little nervous about it, am I going to be able to gig as much as I want to and all that?
But you moved because you got the teaching gig, right?
I moved because I got the teaching gig.
Okay.
And so anyhow, I just remember I was like, I walked across High Street. That's a main street that's, it's like right in front of the campus or in between the campus or however you want to say it. And there's a La Bamba's like right there. I'm talking walking distance from my office. Okay.
Oh, I thought that was a Kalamazoo original. I didn't know it was a.
No, I guess it was some kind of a chain because they had chorizo. They had all the same like artwork in place with the burritos as big as they had and all of that. Now, guess what is occupying the space of La Bamba? Because La Bamba's not there anymore. Guess what's there?
Don't tell me they got a Chipotle.
Not a Chipotle.
Qdoba?
A Qdoba.
Oh goodness.
So, yeah, it's kind of a funny thing. I thought that there was some kind of I think there was a La Bamba's on Michigan State campus actually. But yeah, so anyhow, I mean, I remember going to La Bamba and like, it was the authentic stuff because, only the person that was checking you out spoke a little bit of English. Nobody else. You knew it was the real stuff.
That's funny. Even in that bubble, yeah, I had no idea that it wasn't. I thought that was a local favorite. I didn't know it was a chain. Wow.
Yeah. Well, but I think a limited chain, some kind of limited chain, like maybe they had like 4 or 5 of them, like, or something like that. But it just happens that one was in Kalamazoo and then one was in Columbus, walking distance from my office.
So you probably felt you were like, I made the right move. I'm good.
Exactly. I was like, I don't even have to leave La Bamba's behind. I just remember, I remember talking to you. I remember we were, in the big burrito, and you were always, it's big burrito, and I just remember you saying that you, you just don't know why they have to put so much rice. Nobody needs that much rice in a burrito.
Yeah, I was low carb before it was popular. I wanted the goods. I don't want too much rice. That's funny. You remember that. Whining about something.
Oh my goodness.
That's
so one thing I did want to ask you about. So in some of these interviews, and now, I haven't just interviewed musicians. I've interviewed all kinds of folks, some politicians, academics, philanthropists. I've interviewed folks from a segment of YouTube called The Manosphere. I'm going to be interviewing Peter Butinev, who is he's Saint Vladimir, the
seminary.
The seminary. I'm sorry. He's and also I had him come in and I did this big thing where I was doing a black gospel setting of an Eastern Orthodox Vespers.
Yeah, I saw that. It's incredible. That's what I called you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was involved in that, and so I'm going to do one of his podcasts, and he's going to come on. So it's been athletes, all kinds of different folks. Well, hey, if you can keep buying stuff, and more expensive stuff, then you can keep yourself distracted, right?
Hey, those bases back there didn't pay for themselves, did they?
That one that is, let's see if I can get to it.
The Conklin, the Bill Dickens?
Yeah, that's right. That's the Bill Dickens.
Is it the Bill Dickens model?
It is the Bill Dickens model.
It's so. I see. I had the Groove Tools in college. I had the Groove Tools 7-string, and then I realized I shouldn't have bought it because then the Bill Dickens model came out that was neck through. That's the one. Did you get it? You worked with him for a while, didn't you?
I did work with him for a while. I didn't get it from him though. I interviewed him and we talked through that thing, but I saw it at a store. It was used. It was at a Sam Ash. I walked in one day, and for years and years I've wanted that bass. So I walked in and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And then I started thinking in my head, how much stuff can I sell? I was like, I would do that.
How do I justify this purchase moment? Yeah, I know that all too well. What can I get rid of to get this?
Yeah.
That's a move.
Yeah. Well, Joe, it's been great talking to you, and we're gonna have to do this again. I think we could go for another hour and a half easy.
Yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface.
Yeah, we hardly even talked about anything.
If you ever get a chance, just think about it. If there was a way to get some of the old crew all together on one, I mean, we could, right? Like a Zoom. Yeah. I mean, I know it's hard because, it's hard to not talk over each other and do the whole thing. But man, it would be great to have a bit of a reunion with everybody.
Yeah, it really would. I'll have to figure out how to make that happen.
If anyone's going to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, don't log off yet, okay. But stick around. But thanks for your time and energy. Miss you, man.
Miss you too. Thanks for having me on, Thunder. Such a pleasure and an honor.
All right, man. God bless.